not for the ghosts that kept him awake at night, and certainly not for the staff who moved like shadows through his mansion, trained to exist without leaving a trace behind. He liked it that way, controlled, silent, predictable, nothing unexpected, nothing soft, nothing human enough to interfere with the life he'd crafted out of steel and blood. So when he pushed open the door to his office that morning, he expected the same stillness he always walked into. Instead, he found noise. Quiet, gentle noise, soft laughter, a warm voice, the kind that didn't belong anywhere near his world. Ryan Blake stood inside, leaning against the side of Luca's desk as if it were the most natural place in the world for him to be. Tall, relaxed, sleeves rolled up, tie hanging loose around his neck, Ryan looked more like some charming stranger at a cafe than Luca's second-in-command. He had that easy smile he always carried, the one that made women trust him too quickly and made enemies underestimate him. Luca had always found it irritatingly effective. But it was Ryan's smile that stopped Luca in the doorway. It was hers. Emily Carter, the new maid, stood in front of Ryan holding a small silver tray with a porcelain coffee set neatly arranged on top. She was dressed in the simple black dress and white apron of the Kai Mansion staff, hair pulled into a neat low ponytail, shoulders straight, posture respectful. He had seen her before, passing him in hallways, murmuring a soft, "Good morning, sir," eyes lowered like she understood exactly what world she had stepped into. Invisible, unimportant. That was how people like her were supposed to be. But now she was smiling at Ryan, a soft, shy curve of her lips, one she tried and failed to suppress. Her cheeks warmed with pink, her hazel eyes lifted, meeting Ryan's with something gentle, something Luca had never once received from her. Ryan leaned a little closer, murmuring something that made her laugh under her breath. And Luca froze. Not visibly, not enough for either of them to notice, but inside, something slammed against him like a fist to the chest. Sharp, unwelcome, hot. Jealousy. The realization hit him so fast he couldn't disguise the tightening in his jaw. He didn't understand it. He didn't want to understand it. There was no reason, no logical explanation for the sensation clawing up his spine. He barely knew the girl, barely remembered what her voice sounded like. She wasn't anything more than a staff member, hired to clean floors and polish glass and carry coffee. Yet somehow, she had just become a threat. His presence filled the doorway before his voice did, changing the air, swallowing the warmth in the room whole. Ryan looked up first, his grin fading into something more cautious. "Boss," Ryan said immediately, pushing off the desk. The tray trembled slightly in Emily's hands as she straightened with a gasp. The smile vanished from her face. Something in Luca flinched at that, too. He stepped forward, his footsteps slow, controlled, pretending the jolt inside him didn't exist. "You're blocking the desk," he said to her, voice flat, unreadable. Her eyes widened. I'm sorry, sir." She moved quickly, carefully, placing the tray on the open space he indicated with a small nod. A few strands of hair slipped from behind her ear as she lowered her head, and Luca caught himself noticing their softness before gripping the edge of his desk to stop that thought. Ryan cleared his throat lightly. "I asked her to bring your coffee. You skipped breakfast." "I didn't ask for it," Luca said, sitting behind the desk as though the chair could anchor him back into common sense. "That's kind of the point," Ryan muttered. "If we waited for you to ask, you'd forget to eat for a week." Emily stood perfectly still, fingers clasped in front of her apron, her breathing barely noticeable. Luca didn't look at her. He refused to, but he felt her presence like a pulse in the room, impossible to ignore. "Put it down," he ordered, even though it was already placed neatly in front of him. She hesitated, then steadied one of the cups, ensuring it didn't wobble. Her scent drifted to him, soap, linen, something faintly sweet. He hated how quickly he noticed it. "What's your name?" he asked, eyes on the paperwork in front of him, pretending it didn't matter. "Emily, sir," she whispered. "Emily Carter." Emily. The name slid into his mind too easily, settling in a place nothing else ever managed to reach. "Next time," he said, flipping a page with unnecessary calm. "Knock before entering my office." "Yes, sir," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. She did knock, Ryan added unhelpfully. I opened the door. Luca lifted his eyes slowly. Ryan went silent immediately. Emily took a tiny step back. Would you like anything else, sir? No. She nodded, then turned to leave. But as she walked past Ryan, she looked up, just for a second, and offered him a small, instinctive smile of goodbye. That smile, soft and real and meant for someone else, made something violent unfurl inside Luca. The door closed behind her, and the silence that followed pressed against his ribs like a warning. Ryan let out a slow breath. Good coffee, he muttered. She's good, smart, quick, the staff likes her. You doing performance reviews now? Luca asked, voice low but edged. Ryan shrugged, amused. Just saying she's different. Luca didn't answer. He didn't need to. He already knew she was different. He just didn't understand why it mattered. Not yet. Luca tried to bury himself in work that morning, but every number on the page blurred into the curve of a shy smile that wasn't meant for him. He told himself it was nothing, that it was irritation, annoyance, distraction, anything, but what it really felt like. Yet every time his mind replayed the moment Emily looked at his capo like that, something inside him tightened so sharply he had to unclench his fists. He wasn't a man who felt jealousy. He wasn't a man who felt anything he couldn't control, but he felt her. And it unsettled him, more than he liked to admit. By the time he stepped into the hallway again, he had forced his expression back into the cold stillness that everyone recognized. People straightened as he passed. Voices faded. Footsteps softened. The world always reacted to Luca Canty long before he reacted to anything. Except her. Emily was at the far end of the hallway dusting one of the cabinet shelves. She didn't see him at first. She was focused, careful, her movements light and precise. Something about the way she concentrated, the way her fingers traced the edges of picture frames like she didn't want to disturb anything, pulled him toward her before he could stop himself. She turned when she sensed movement behind her and stiffened the moment she saw him. Her hands dropped to her sides and she swallowed, a small, nervous breath escaping. Good morning, sir, she said, quieter than usual. He didn't answer. He couldn't. His eyes were already studying her too closely. She looked different in the sunlight. Her hair caught the light, her skin softer, her eyes brighter. He noticed everything he should not be noticing. You missed a spot, he said, pointing to a surface she had already cleaned. Her cheeks warmed and she quickly wiped it again. Is that better, sir? His gaze didn't leave her face. Yes. The single word held more weight than she understood. Emily stepped back, trying to give him space. She didn't know that Luca had already felt too much space between them from the moment she had smiled at Ryan. He walked past her, pretending he wasn't affected, but the scent of her threw him off balance. Something gentle, something human, something he didn't have in his world. Emily exhaled slowly when he left the room, trying to calm her racing heart. Luca Canty held a presence that filled every inch of a hallway, yet today he felt different. Closer, sharper, like he noticed too much. She tried to focus on her work, but her mind kept drifting back to the way he had looked at her. Not angry, not annoyed, something else she couldn't name. She forced herself to look anywhere but the direction he had walked in, and that was when Ryan appeared. He leaned casually against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching her with curiosity. He doesn't look at anyone the way he looked at you just now, Ryan said lightly. Emily froze. What are you talking about? Ryan smirked. He notices you, trust me. That man sees everything he wants to see. Her face warmed. He's my boss, that's all. Sure, Ryan said with a teasing grin, and I'm the Pope. She tried to hide her laugh but failed. Ryan stepped closer, gentle, warm, the complete opposite of Luca's cold intensity. You seem tense. Did he say something to you? No, she replied quickly. I'm just trying to stay out of the way. You don't have to stay out of mine, he said softly. Emily's breath hitched, but whatever she might have said next vanished the moment she heard footsteps. Heavy, controlled, familiar. Luca. His presence hit the room before his voice did. Emily straightened so quickly the cloth nearly slipped from her hands. Ryan's smile widened, amused. "Watch this," he whispered. Emily didn't get to ask what he meant. Luca stepped into the doorway. One look at Ryan standing too close to her, and his expression darkened, barely noticeable, but enough to make the air shift. "Don't you have work to do, Ryan?" Luca said quietly. Ryan didn't move. "I do. This just felt more interesting." Luca's eyes flicked to Emily. She felt the heat of that stare all the way down her spine. "Emily, come with me," he said, his voice low. Her breath caught. Ryan raised an eyebrow in surprise. She followed Luca instantly, heart pounding. She didn't dare look back. And as she walked beside him, she felt it the growing storm beneath his calm, the jealousy he refused to acknowledge. The jealousy that was only beginning. The mansion felt different the next day, as if the walls themselves sensed a tension rising beneath the surface. Emily moved through the rooms quietly, doing her best to disappear the way she had when she first arrived, but something inside her refused to settle. Every breath felt too quick, every step felt too loud, and every time she turned a corner, she expected to see Luca or Ryan or both. She wasn't wrong. In the kitchen that morning, Mia whispered that the housekeeper had been unusually strict, that the guards had changed positions, that even the cooks were speaking softer than usual. Emily didn't understand why until she stepped into the hallway and felt it again, the weight of someone watching her. She didn't even need to turn. She knew it was Luca. He stood at the top of the staircase, hands in his pockets, gaze fixed on her with that unreadable intensity she had felt the day before. He didn't move. He didn't say a word. He simply watched her as if waiting for something she didn't know she had to give. Her heart raced. She dipped her head respectfully and rushed down the corridor, but she felt him following, not physically, but in the way she could feel the air change whenever he was near. She entered the laundry room, trying to catch her breath. "You're being hunted," Mia said behind her. Emily spun around. "What are you talking about?" Mia lifted both brows. "Luca Canty hasn't taken his eyes off you since breakfast." Emily's face warmed. "That's not true." "Sweetheart," Mia whispered, "he looked at you like you were the only person in the room." Emily shook her head and busied herself with folding linens. "I don't want attention. I just want to work." "Then stop being so adorable," Mia muttered and walked away. Emily sighed, wishing it were that easy. She left the laundry room a few minutes later, carrying a stack of folded towels toward the guest wing. Halfway down the hall, she heard voices and recognized one instantly: Ryan's. "No," she said immediately to herself. "I'm not doing this again." But Ryan saw her before she could turn around. "Emily," he called with a bright smile, "come here for a second." She tried to protest. "I really have to." 10 seconds, he promised. She walked toward him hesitantly. He leaned against the wall, arms crossed, studying her like she was a puzzle he was trying to figure out. "How are you feeling today?" he asked. "Fine," she answered too quickly. He hummed. That's the universal answer for not fine. She tried to hide her smile. Ryan stepped a little closer. "Look, if he said something to scare you, you can tell me. I mean it." "He didn't scare me," Emily whispered. "Good," Ryan's voice softened, "because I actually like seeing you smile." Her eyes widened slightly. Ryan chuckled. "Relax, I'm not proposing. I just think you're someone worth noticing." Emily didn't know what to say. Kindness was dangerous in this house. Kindness made her heart react in ways it shouldn't. She took a small step back. "I really should finish my tasks." Before she could escape, the hallway fell silent. Cold silent. Ryan's expression shifted. "Here we go," he said under his breath. Emily felt Luca before she saw him. His presence rolled through the hallway like a shadow stretching over sunlight. She turned, breath catching. Luca stood at the end of the hall, jaw tight, eyes locked on the space between her and Ryan. The tension in his body didn't shout, it screamed. He walked toward them slowly, each step controlled in a way that felt more dangerous than shouting. He stopped inches from them and looked straight at Ryan. "Why are you here?" Luca asked softly. Ryan didn't flinch, talking. To her. To whoever I want, Ryan replied calmly. Emily's heart hammered. She stepped back, but Luca's gaze snapped to her, immediately catching the movement. Emily, you're needed in the East Wing, he said. His tone was controlled, but something darker pulsed underneath. She nodded quickly and walked away without looking back. Her hands trembled as she rounded the corner. Behind her, Ryan let out a low whistle. You're losing it, boss. But Luca didn't reply. He didn't have to. Every step Emily took, every breath she tried to steady, carried the same truth. Luca Canty didn't ignore her anymore. And that was becoming dangerous. The storm began long before the clouds rolled in. It started quietly inside Luca, a tension tightening through him like a wire pulled too sharp. The more he tried to ignore it, the stronger it snapped back, until even his men sensed something was shifting in him. They didn't speak of it, but they stepped carefully around him, giving answers faster, eye contact shorter, movements tighter. Everyone felt something brewing. Yet only Emily moved through the mansion, unaware of the effect she had on him. That afternoon, she headed toward Luca's private office with fresh linens. The hallway was empty, quiet except for the soft tapping of her shoes on the polished floor. She placed the folded linens on the cabinet outside his door and turned to leave when a low voice froze her in place. Inside, now. She turned slowly, realizing the voice belonged to him. Luca stood in the doorway of his office, sleeves rolled up, a faint smear of dried blood along his knuckles. He had been fighting something or someone. She couldn't tell. His eyes were darker than usual, shadowed with anger and something she couldn't read. Emily swallowed and stepped inside. The moment the door closed behind them, the air changed. There was no noise from outside, no other presence, just the two of them in a room too small for the silence stretching between them. What happened to your hand? She whispered. He didn't look down. It's nothing. It didn't look like nothing. A thin line of blood trailed across his palm, and she instinctively reached out before she realized what she was doing. The moment her fingers brushed his skin, he stiffened, but he didn't pull away. Emily hesitated, then quietly said, "Sit." Luca arched an eyebrow, not used to receiving orders, but something in her voice surprised him enough to obey. He sat on the edge of his desk, legs slightly apart, shoulders tense, eyes locked on her. She gently took his hand, turning it toward the light. "You need this cleaned," she said softly. Luca didn't respond. He simply watched her, breathing slower than before, as if calming for the first time all day. The scent of her shampoo drifted somewhere between them, softening the razor edges of his anger. Emily found the small first aid kit in the drawer and returned to him. She didn't ask how she knew where it was. She just knelt in front of him, close enough that he could feel her breath on his skin. Her fingers worked gently, wrapping gauze around his knuckles with careful precision. "Does it hurt?" she whispered. "Not anymore." His voice was low, rough, unfamiliar even to him. Emily paused for a moment and looked up at him. Their eyes met, and the room tightened instantly. Something passed between them, something unspoken but powerful enough to make her heart stutter. She lowered her gaze quickly, focusing on the bandage, pretending she hadn't felt that spark. When she stood, Luca's hand caught her wrist gently, stopping her. "Emily." Hearing her name and his voice sent a shiver down her spine. He didn't know what he meant to say. He wasn't a man who talked about feelings he didn't even understand. He only knew that the moment Ryan had stood too close to her in the hallway earlier, something inside him had threatened to tear. Before he could form the words, a knock shattered the tension. Luca released her instantly. The door opened and Ryan stepped inside without waiting. His gaze flicked from Luca to Emily, landing on the first aid kit in her hand. His jaw clenched. "Am I interrupting?" he said slowly. Luca's expression iced over. "Yes." Ryan ignored the warning. "I need to speak to you about last night's deal." "Later," Luca replied sharply. Ryan's eyes returned to Emily, lingering long enough to make Luca's teeth tighten. "You okay, Emily?" She nodded quickly. "Yes, I was just helping." "I can see that," Ryan said, expression unreadable. Emily stepped back, feeling trapped between the two of them. She needed to leave before the air split open. "I'll go," she whispered. Luca didn't stop her, but his eyes followed her all the way to the door. The moment it closed behind her, Ryan let out a slow breath. "You're falling apart, boss." Luca stood, his jaw ticking. "You're crossing lines." Ryan shook his head. "No, you are." Silence filled the room, thick and dangerous. Outside, Emily leaned against the wall, her heart racing. She didn't know what she had stepped into. But she knew one thing. Luca Canty was no longer a distant, untouchable shadow. He was something else now. Something far more dangerous. The house felt heavier the next morning, as if the night had wrapped the mansion in a silence that refused to lift. Emily tried to move through her tasks the way she always did, keeping her footsteps quiet and her presence invisible, but something had shifted. Every room she entered felt like it was waiting for her. Every hallway felt watched. Every breath felt like it carried someone else's tension. She tried to ignore it, but she couldn't ignore the memory of Luca's eyes on her the night before. There had been a moment, just one, when he had looked at her like she wasn't staff, like she wasn't a maid at all, like she was something he didn't know how to deal with. Emily pushed the thought out of her mind and went to the dining hall to refill the water pitchers. She had barely stepped into the doorway when she saw them. Luca and Ryan were standing on opposite sides of the long table, their silence sharp as broken glass. Ryan's jaw was set, Luca's expression unreadable, but something about the air between them felt dangerous. Emily turned to leave quietly, but Ryan's voice cut through the room. "Emily, wait." Luca's head snapped up so fast she froze. Ryan walked toward her with a calm smile that didn't match the tension in his shoulders. "Morning, Emily. You're here early." She tried to keep her voice steady. "I just came to refill the pitchers." Ryan nodded, stepping closer. "Let me help." Before she could answer, Luca's voice rolled across the room, low and cold. "She doesn't need your help." Ryan didn't look at him. He kept his eyes on her. "Do you want help, Emily?" She shook her head as quickly as she could. "I'm fine. I can manage." Luca's jaw relaxed a fraction at her answer, but the storm still swirled in his eyes. Ryan shifted his weight, studying Luca with a faint smirk. "You know, boss, if you're going to glare at me every time I talk to her, you could at least try being subtle about it." Emily felt the breath leave her chest. Luca's eyes darkened instantly. "You think this is about you?" Luca asked. Ryan shrugged, "Pretty sure it's not about tablecloths." Emily stepped back, gripping the pitcher tighter. "Please stop. I don't want to cause any trouble." Ryan's gaze softened. "You're not causing trouble. Some people are just not used to sharing air." Luca moved before Ryan finished speaking. One step. Two. In seconds he was in front of her, blocking Ryan's line of sight. His presence swallowed the room, cold and sharp, but his voice when he spoke was quiet. "Emily, come with me." She hesitated. "I need to finish." "Now." The word wasn't shouted, but the force of it made her pulse jump. She placed the pitcher down and followed him out of the room. Ryan watched them go, eyes narrowing. Luca didn't speak as she trailed behind him down the hallway. He didn't slow or look back until they reached a smaller sitting room, empty and flooded with morning light. Only then did he turn to face her. "Do you have any idea what you're doing?" he asked softly. She blinked at him. "I don't understand." "You're spending time with him." "He was helping me," Emily said quietly. Luca took a step closer. "He's not helping you. He's provoking me." She had never heard him speak like this. Not cold, not distant, something else entirely, something unstable. "Luca," she whispered, "you're my employer. I'm just trying to do my job." His jaw tightened. "Then why does it bother you when he stands too close?" She froze. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She didn't even know he had noticed. She didn't understand why he was asking. Luca stepped closer until she could feel the heat of his breath. "Tell me, Emily." Her voice broke into a whisper, "because it causes problems." His eyes flickered. "What kind of problems?" Yui answered for her and she flinched. His hand lifted, not touching her but hovering inches from her cheek as if fighting itself. "This isn't your fault," he said quietly, "but he needs to stop." Emily's heart pounded so loudly, she was sure he could hear it. Luca's gaze dropped to her lips for one brief, reckless moment before he forced himself back a step, breathing unsteady. "Stay away from him, Emily." She swallowed. "You can't ask me that." "I can ask anything I want." Her chest tightened. "Why?" Luca looked at her like the truth was clawing its way out of him. "Because he is not the one I want standing this close to you." Emily's breath stopped. Before she could answer, a loud crash erupted from down the hall, followed by hurried footsteps. Both of them turned toward the noise. The storm outside had finally reached the mansion. And it was only getting worse. The crash echoed through the mansion like a warning shot. Emily's heart lurched as Luca moved instantly, the softness in his eyes gone, replaced by the sharp, deadly instinct of the man everyone feared. He stepped in front of her without thinking, shielding her as if danger had already breached the walls. "Stay here," he said, voice low and controlled in a way that made the air vibrate. Before she could protest, footsteps pounded toward them. Not frantic, not sloppy, purposeful, heavy. Someone was running, and Luca positioned himself like a wall ready to break bones. The door swung open, and Marco, one of his most trusted guards, appeared breathing hard. "Boss, we have an issue downstairs." Luca didn't blink. "What issue?" Marco hesitated for a heartbeat. The new shipment was sabotaged. Someone broke into the storage hall. Emily felt the blood drain from her face. She didn't understand the details, but she understood the danger. Luca's jaw clenched, a muscle ticked under his cheek, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. "Go secure the perimeter," he ordered. "Now." Marco nodded and ran off, boots pounding against the floor until the sound disappeared. Emily turned to Luca nervously. "Is everything all right?" He didn't look at her immediately. He was calculating, thinking, shifting between two roles: the man protecting his empire, and the man standing far too close to a girl who made him feel too much. "You need to stay in your room," he said. "I have work," she whispered. "Not today." "But sir." "Emily," he said quietly, and she felt the tremor beneath the control in his voice. "If anything happens to you." She waited, but the sentence died in his throat. He wasn't ready to say it. Maybe he didn't even know how. Finally, he exhaled, pushing a hand through his hair. "Go to your room, lock the door. Don't open it unless you hear my voice." Emily wanted to argue, but fear in his eyes stopped her. She nodded slowly and turned away. Her footsteps echoed in the hall, but she kept glancing back, half hoping, half terrified that he would follow. He didn't. He disappeared down the stairs, with the silent fury of a man heading straight into danger. When Emily reached her room, she tried to lock the door, but her hands were shaking. The quiet felt unbearable, heavy, wrong. She pressed her ear to the wood, hearing nothing but distant footsteps and muffled voices. Minutes passed, maybe an hour. Every sound made her jump. Then someone knocked softly. "Emily." She froze. It was Luca's voice. Ryan's voice slipped through the door like warm air into a cold room. "Emily, it's me. Let me in." Her fingers trembled. Luca told her to open the door only for him, and Luca wasn't here. She backed away from the door. "I can't," Luca said. Ryan sighed. "Emily, Luca is downstairs dealing with something serious. He sent me to check on you." But something in his tone wasn't right. Not dangerous, but conflicted, heavy with something unspoken. Emily placed her palm against the door. "Why are you really here?" There was a long pause. "Because you look at him differently now," Ryan said softly. "And he looks at you like he's losing control." Her breath caught. "He's going to get himself hurt if he keeps pretending he doesn't care. And you're going to get caught in the middle if you pretend you don't feel anything either." Ryan's words stung with truth she hadn't admitted even to herself. Emily's voice trembled. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing," he said honestly, "except for you to be careful. Because his world isn't gentle and neither is he. But he would burn that world down if something happened to you. I've never seen him like this." Emily closed her eyes. Ryan wasn't threatening her. He wasn't warning her away. He was warning her of what was coming. Someone shouted downstairs, and Ryan tensed behind the door. "Stay inside," he said. "Please." He left, footsteps fading quickly. Emily sank onto her bed, heart racing. She didn't know who had sabotaged the shipment. She didn't know why Luca had looked at her like she was the first weakness he'd ever had. But she knew one thing for certain. Whatever storm had entered the mansion, she was no longer outside of it. She was at the center. The shouting downstairs grew louder, echoing through the mansion like thunder. Emily sat frozen on the edge of her bed, her hands gripping the blanket so tightly her knuckles turned white. Every voice carried tension. Every footstep sounded like danger moving closer. She wanted to obey Luca and stay inside, but fear slowly turned into something sharper curiosity mixed with dread. Then everything went silent. Too silent. Emily stood and walked slowly to the door, pressing her ear against the wooden frame. She heard faint voices but could not make out the words. Her chest tightened. Something inside her insisted she had to know what was happening. She opened the door as quietly as she could and stepped into the hall. The corridor was empty, shadows stretching long across the carpet. The stillness unsettled her. She moved forward carefully, her soft steps muffled by the floor. Every few feet she paused to listen, her breath catching in her throat. When she reached the top of the main staircase, she looked down and froze. Luca was standing in the center of the foyer, 3 of his men surrounding a man Emily had never seen before. The intruder was bruised, bleeding from his lip, but still smirking like he enjoyed being caught. Luca's voice was low but deadly. "Who sent you?" The man spit blood onto the floor. "I don't talk to cowards." Before anyone could react, Luca struck him with a force that echoed through the entire mansion. The man collapsed to his knees. Luca grabbed him by the collar and dragged him up again. "Try again," Luca growled through clenched teeth. Emily covered her mouth, a soft gasp slipping out despite her best effort. Luca looked up instantly. His eyes locked onto her. Her heartbeat stopped. He released the intruder without looking away, his entire focus shifting to her like everything else in the room had disappeared. He took one step forward before catching himself. "Emily, you need to go back to your room." His voice was colder than she had ever heard, yet beneath the frost, there was something else, something shaking beneath the surface like fear. She tried to step back, but her feet wouldn't move. Lucas stared at her for a long moment, then turned to Marco. "Get him out of here, now." Marco and the others dragged the intruder through the back hall. The moment they disappeared, Lucas strode up the stairs toward her. She took a step back instinctively, but he reached her in seconds. His hands gripped her arms lightly but firmly. "What are you doing out here?" he asked quietly. "I heard shouting," she whispered. "Do you think that makes it safe for you to walk toward it?" I was worried." Something flickered across Luca's eyes. Worrying for him was not something he was used to. He released a slow breath, trying to calm the storm raging inside him. "Emily, I told you to stay in your room for a reason." She swallowed hard. "I know, but being alone felt worse." His jaw tightened. "You don't understand the danger. Someone sabotaged the shipment to send a message. Someone is watching. Someone walked into my home today, and if they realize you matter to me." He stopped too late. Emily's eyes widened. "Matter to you?" Luca's breath caught, as if he had spoken a truth he wasn't prepared to admit. Before he could answer, footsteps approached. Ryan emerged from the corner, his expression shifting the moment he saw Luca's hands on her arms. "Am I interrupting?" Ryan asked, though his tone said he already knew he was. Luca stepped slightly in front of her instinctively, blocking her from Ryan's view. "What do you want?" Luca said sharply. "I came to check on her," Ryan replied evenly. "She doesn't need you to check on her." Ryan raised an eyebrow. "It looks like she might." Emily stepped back from both men. "Please don't argue because of me." Ryan's gaze softened. "We're not arguing because of you. We're arguing because he doesn't know how to handle what he feels." Luca snapped his head toward Ryan, eyes blazing. "One more word," Luca warned. Ryan lifted his hands. "I'm only telling her the truth." Emily looked between them, her heart pounding. The tension between them stretched so tight it felt like one wrong breath would snap it. Ryan finally turned to her. "Be careful, Emily. People who matter to him often pay the price." Luca moved toward Ryan instantly, fury cutting across his face, but Ryan stepped back with a calm smirk. Emily ran forward, placing her hands on Luca's chest before he did something he would regret. "Please stop," she whispered. The moment her hands touched him, Luca froze. His anger vanished as if her touch pulled him out of the fire. He stared down at her hands on his chest, then at her upturned face. "Emily," he whispered, almost broken. Her breath trembled. "I don't want anyone hurt because of me." Luca closed his eyes for a moment, as if fighting something deep inside him. Then he exhaled. And when he opened his eyes again, the storm in them was darker than ever. "You have no idea," he said quietly, "how far I would go to keep that from happening." Emily felt her knees weaken. And behind them, Ryan watched, silently understanding exactly what Luca had just confessed, without saying a single word. Emily didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the mansion, every shift of wind against the windows, every muted voice from downstairs kept her wide awake. Luca's confession, his near confession, hung in her mind like a heartbeat she couldn't silence. The way he had said it, the way his voice had broken, when he realized what she meant to him, it replayed in her thoughts again and again. She pressed a hand to her chest, trying to steady the storm inside her. She shouldn't feel anything for him. He was her employer. He was dangerous. He walked in a world she had no place in. And yet the memory of his hands on her arms, the fear in his eyes, the way he had looked at her like she was the only thing that mattered, it tore through her reasoning. As dawn crept through her curtains, she knew she couldn't stay locked in fear. She needed to talk to him. She needed answers even if she wasn't ready for what those answers might be. Emily stepped out of her room quietly, the morning air cold against her skin. The mansion was silent at this early hour, the guards changing shifts outside, and a faint smell of coffee drifting from the kitchen. She hesitated at the bottom of the stairs, wondering if she was being foolish, but her feet carried her forward before her mind decided. She found him in his office. The door was cracked open, his voice low inside. She pushed it gently and saw Luca standing with Marco, discussing the break-in. Maps, weapons, documents scattered across the desk. He looked exhausted, dark circles beneath his eyes, tension carved deep into his shoulders. Marco left moments later, nodding to Emily in quiet respect as he passed her. She stepped inside slowly. Luca didn't look at her right away. He remained staring at the documents on his desk, his hands braced on the wood, his breath heavy. Emily's voice was soft. "You didn't sleep." He lifted his gaze sharply. "What are you doing here?" Her voice trembled despite her attempt to steady it. "I needed to see you." A muscle in Luca's jaw tightened. "This isn't safe. I told you to stay away until things calm down." She stepped closer. "I'm not afraid of you." His eyes flashed. "You should be." Emily shook her head. "You're not going to hurt me." Luca stood straighter. "Not intentionally. But the world I live and the threats I face, they touch everything around me, everything I care about." Emily's breath caught. There it was again, that word, care. It slipped out of him like a truth he couldn't hold back. She swallowed and whispered what she had been holding inside all night. "Why do you look at me like that?" Luca's control cracked. In 2 steps, he was in front of her, not touching her, but close enough that she felt his breath warm against her skin. His voice was low, rough, unguarded. "Because I can't stop," he whispered. "Because every time you're near, I lose focus. Because the thought of someone hurting you makes me want to burn down this entire city." Emily's heart pounded so loudly, she was sure he could hear it. Luca lifted a hand slowly, as if giving himself one last chance to walk away. But he didn't. His fingers brushed her cheek lightly, barely a touch, but enough to send shivers racing down her skin. "You make me reckless, Emily," he said quietly. "I don't know how to control it." Her lips parted. "Luca." He leaned in just a little closer, eyes locked on hers. "Tell me to stop," he whispered. "If you tell me to stop, I will." Emily's breath trembled. She didn't move, didn't speak. Luca's eyes darkened. "Emily, I need you to say it. Tell me to stop." But she still said nothing. His forehead rested against hers, his voice barely a whisper. "You don't know what you're doing to me." Her fingers curled into his shirt, trembling. Just as he moved to close the distance between them, footsteps echoed in the hall. Luca pulled away, instantly chest heaving. Emily stepped back, her pulse racing. Mrs. Hayes, the housekeeper, appeared in the doorway, holding a stack of papers, completely unaware of the moment she had just shattered. Luca's expression snapped back into cold control. "What is it?" "The account book, sir," she said nervously. "You asked to review them." He nodded tightly. "Leave them on the desk." Mrs. Hayes placed the papers down and left quickly, sensing the thick tension in the room. Silence filled the office once more. Emily stood near the door, breathing hard. Luca stared at her with something raw and unfinished in his eyes. "This isn't over," he whispered. But before either of them could say another word, a loud noise erupted outside the mansion. A car door slammed, then another, fast footsteps. Luca's head snapped toward the window. "They're here." And Emily realized with a freezing jolt. The storm wasn't approaching anymore. It had arrived. The footsteps outside were fast, heavy, purposeful. Not the usual guards, not the staff. These were intruders. Luca didn't waste a second. He crossed the room in 2 long strides and grabbed Emily's wrist firmly but not harshly, pulling her behind him. "Stay close," he said, his voice low and sharp. Before she could respond, the front doors slammed open downstairs. Voices erupted, deep, menacing voices. Luca's instincts snapped into place. He moved with frightening calm, dragging Emily with him toward the hidden passage at the side of the office. "Where are we going?" she whispered, breathless. "Somewhere they won't find you." "But what about you?" she asked, trembling. Luca stopped for half a second, just long enough for his eyes to meet hers. There was no hesitation in his answer. "I don't matter, you do." Her breath caught, but there was no time to react. Shouts grew louder. Someone yelled Luca's name with a mocking laugh, followed by a crash as if furniture had been knocked aside. Luca pushed the hidden panel open, revealing a narrow hallway behind the wall. "Go inside." Emily shook her head. "I'm not leaving you alone with them." His voice dropped even lower. "Emily, listen to me. These people came to send a message, and the easiest message to send is through someone I care about." She froze. Those words, those exact words, he should never have admitted them. Emily tried again. "I don't want to hide while you face them." Luca grabbed her shoulders gently, but with undeniable authority. "You think I want you out there while they storm my home? I would tear this entire mansion apart brick by brick if it meant keeping you alive." Another crash downstairs, a gunshot. Emily jumped. Inside, Luca ordered, pushing her into the narrow passage, just as heavy footsteps began thundering up the stairs. He began sliding the panel closed, but her hand shot out, grabbing his wrist. "Luca, don't leave me here, please." For the first time since she had known him, her fear broke through all of his control. He looked at her hand, holding him, then up at her face. For a moment the world seemed too quiet, as if suspended between one heartbeat and the next. He reached up and touched her cheek lightly, his thumb brushing her skin with a tenderness she had never imagined from him. "I promise you," he whispered, "I'm coming back." Emily swallowed hard. "Promise." His eyes softened in a way she didn't know he was capable of. "I swear it." He slid the panel closed, just as shadows appeared at the end of the hall. Emily pressed her palms against the wood, trembling, tears burning in her eyes. She stepped back into the darkness, holding her breath as she listened. Downstairs, shouting erupted again. Then she heard Luca's voice, cold, powerful, but layered with something feral. "Who sent you here?" His question was followed by a low laugh from the intruders. A voice answered him, "Whoever is tired of you forgetting your place, canty." Emily's knees weakened. She pressed a hand to her chest, feeling her heartbeat race as footsteps circled around the upstairs corridor. She held still, trying not to breathe too loudly. Then a voice whispered so close to the hidden wall, she almost screamed. "Find the girl." Emily froze. Someone else answered, "She's his weakness." The first voice chuckled, which means killing her will send the message better than killing him. Emily covered her mouth to stifle a gasp. Luca was fighting downstairs. They were hunting her upstairs. She slipped deeper into the hidden corridor, trying to stay silent, but every sound her shoes made on the wood echoed in her ears. She felt her way forward in the darkness until she reached the end where another small exit panel waited. Emily pushed it open, slightly peeking into the dim storage room on the other side. Safe, she thought, relieved for a moment, until she heard footsteps behind her in the hidden passage. Not guards. Not Luca. Heavy, steady, hunting. She ran. Her breaths came fast, her pulse hammering in her ears. She pushed out of the hidden corridor and stumbled into the storage room, slamming the panel behind her. She backed away, searching desperately for something heavy, something to block the entrance. Before she could move, a hand clasped the panel from inside. Emily's breath caught in her throat. The panel slid, opened slowly, revealing a tall, shadowed figure stepping out of the darkness. His voice was soft, almost playful. "Found you." Emily's scream never left her mouth, because, in the same instant, a gunshot exploded across the room. Not from the intruder. From behind him. The man collapsed forward, falling at Emily's feet. And Luca stepped into the doorway, blood on his shirt, gun still raised, chest heaving, eyes wild. "Emily," he breathed, his voice breaking, "you run from everyone but me." She fell into him as he caught her, pressing her against his chest, as if assuring himself she was still alive. Outside the room, more footsteps approached. The storm was far from over. But Luca held her tighter, whispering against her hair. "As long as I'm breathing, no one touches you." The gunshot still echoed in Emily's ears when Luca pulled her behind him, shielding her with his body as more footsteps stormed the hallway. His breath was harsh, controlled only by force, the muscles in his jaw flexing as he listened to the intruders regrouping. Emily clutched the back of his shirt, feeling the tremor of rage running through him. "Stay behind me," he whispered without looking back. "I'm not leaving you," she whispered back. He didn't answer, but his hand reached behind him just enough for his fingers to brush her arm, a silent promise that he had heard her and that it mattered. The lights in the hallway flickered. Shadows moved. Then 3 men appeared at the doorway, silhouettes tall and armed. Luca stepped forward, blocking Emily completely. "Funny," one of them said, sounding amused. "The boss protecting the maid. Word travels fast, can't he? You've finally grown yourself a weakness." Luca's voice came out calm, cold, deadly. "Last chance to walk out alive." They laughed. Emily felt Luca's entire body shift, like a threat waking inside him. Then one of the intruders lifted his gun toward the doorway, aiming for Luca's chest. Emily gasped. Luca didn't hesitate. He grabbed her waist, pulling her sharply to the left the same instant he fired. The men scattered. Bullets cracked into the walls, splintering the wood and sending dust flying. Emily pressed against the floor as Luca shielded her with his own body, firing back with terrifying accuracy. She covered her ears, trembling, feeling the heat of his body above her, the vibrations of every shot. The intruders retreated down the hall, shouting warnings. Luca grabbed her hand and pulled her up. "Run, now." She didn't ask questions. He pulled her into a side hallway, dark and narrow, his grip never loosening. They ran together, their footsteps pounding on the polished floors until the noise faded behind them. In the dim corridor, Luca pushed open a hidden metal door tucked behind a tapestry. Inside was a stairwell descending into darkness. "Go," he urged. She stared at him, breathless. "What about you?" He met her eyes. The look in them was raw, fierce, shaking with something he didn't know how to control. "I'm ending this." "You can't face them alone," she gasped. "I've faced worse," he said, but his voice softened. "I can't fight while I'm thinking about you." Emily stepped closer, chest heaving. "And what if something happens to you?" Luca's breath caught. For a moment, everything around them disappeared. He lifted her chin with trembling fingers, his touch gentle in a way that broke her. "You think I don't know I'm already in too deep," he murmured. "You think I don't lie awake hearing your voice in my head every time I try to sleep?" Emily's eyes filled. "Luca." His thumb brushed her cheek. I didn't want this. I didn't want anyone owning pieces of me. But you walked into my house and now I can't make a single move without thinking of you. Behind them, the footsteps returned louder, more determined. Luca pushed her gently toward the stairs. Please, Emily, go. She shook her head, tears slipping free. I'm scared for you. His eyes softened in a way she had never seen. Then I'll give you something to hold on to, he said, his voice low. Something to keep you breathing until I'm back. Her lips parted, her pulse stopped. He leaned down, closing the distance, until his forehead rested gently against hers, his breath trembling. Emily, he whispered, as if saying her name hurt him. I'm coming back to you. No matter what I have to do, no matter who I have to fight. Her heart broke open. Promise me, she whispered. His voice was barely a breath. I swear it. The footsteps thundered closer. Luca cupped her face with both hands and pressed a soft, quick kiss to the center of her forehead, the first kiss he had ever given her, full of fear and claiming and desperation. Her breath shattered. Go, he said. Emily stumbled backward down the stairs, tears blurring her vision. Before the door closed, she saw Luca turn around, gun in hand, shoulders squared, eyes burning, with a fury that shook her to the core. A second later, the hidden door slammed shut between them. Darkness swallowed her. Gunshots exploded above her. But Emily knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever was happening on the other side of that door, Luca Canty was fighting like a man who had already chosen who he belonged to. And he was fighting his way back to her. Emily ran down the narrow staircase, her breath shaking with every step, the darkness swallowing her as she clutched the cold metal rail. The sound of gunfire exploded above her, each shot echoing through the stone walls like thunder. She wanted to turn back. She wanted to run toward Luca, not away from him, but his last look had pinned her to her path. He had sworn he would return. She had to trust that. At the bottom of the stairs, she reached a narrow room dimly lit by a single bulb. It was bare concrete with old crates and a locked steel door at the far wall. She tried the door, but it didn't budge. She was trapped there until Luca returned, or until the men upstairs found her. She pressed her hands to her ears, trying to block out the noise above, as another shot cracked through the air, followed by a heavy crash like someone hitting the ground. Luca, please be alive, she whispered. The silence that followed was worse than the gunfire. It was hollow, cold, final. Emily backed into the corner, her chest tightening until breathing felt impossible. Her fingers dug into her apron as tears blurred her vision. She had confessed she loved him. He had promised to return, and now she did not know if he ever would. Then footsteps echoed down the stairwell. Slow, heavy, controlled. Not Luca. Emily stiffened, pressing herself against the wall. The shape grew clearer as it descended. Tall, broad-armed. Her heart dropped as she recognized the silhouette. Ryan. But something was wrong. His clothes were torn, his face bruised, a line of blood at the edge of his jaw. When he reached the bottom, he closed the distance between them with a limp, breathing hard, but alive. Emily, are you hurt? He asked, his voice rough. No, she whispered, where is Luca? Ryan swallowed and looked away, and she felt her knees weaken. No, she whispered again, shaking her head. Ryan, tell me. Ryan stepped closer and placed a hand on her shoulder, steadying her. The moment he touched her, she flinched, fearing the worst. He is alive, Ryan said quickly. Emily's breath broke in relief, but he continued. The fight moved upstairs. There are more men than we thought, and he is outnumbered. He sent me to get you. She took a trembling step toward him. We need to help him. Ryan hesitated. You are the last person he wants in danger right now. Another explosion shook the house. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Emily's heart lurched. She pushed past Ryan toward the stairs, but he grabbed her arm gently. Emily, wait. There is something you need to know before you face whatever is happening up there. She looked at him, confused and terrified. Ryan lowered his voice. They weren't here for Luca. They came for you. Her breath stopped. What are you talking about? Ryan exhaled slowly. One of the men said something before Luca knocked him out. Something I didn't understand at first, but you need to hear it. They said the girl carries the debt, not the boss. Emily's stomach twisted. Debt. That word dug into a part of her past she had buried deep. She felt the world tilt under her feet. Ryan continued, I thought it meant nothing, but now I think they were sent by someone connected to your family, someone who wants to use you to control Luca. Emily shook her head. No, that cannot be true. Ryan looked at her gently. Emily, think. Why did you come to New York? Why did you need work so badly? What are you running from? Before she could answer, footsteps thundered down the staircase behind Ryan. Fast, sharp, aggressive. Emily gasped and backed away, but Ryan grabbed her and pulled her behind him. The shadow reached the bottom. Luca. Bloody, exhausted breathing like he had run through hell to get to her. His shirt was torn, his knuckles wrapped in her bandage were red again, his eyes wild, until they found her. The moment they did, everything inside him softened with a fierce, painful relief. Emily, he breathed. She ran straight into him, without thinking, throwing her arms around him, pressing her face into his chest. His arms wrapped around her, instantly holding her so tight she felt the tremble in his hands. I told you, he whispered against her hair, I would come back. She nodded into him, tears falling silently. Ryan stepped back, watching them, a quiet sadness crossing his face, but also acceptance. The decision had been made long before this moment. Luca lifted Emily's chin, gently forcing her to look into his eyes. You are safe now. No one will touch you, ever again. She swallowed hard. They said they came for me. Luca's jaw tightened. His eyes darkened with a promise of violence. I heard them, and I will find out why. But not tonight. Tonight you stay with me. She nodded breathlessly. Luca lifted her hand, pressing it to his chest, right over his racing heartbeat. Emily, this is yours now, he whispered. If you want it, if you want me. She felt her world settle into place. She nodded slowly, tears falling again. I want you, Luca. He closed his eyes as if those words broke something inside him. When he opened them again, the danger was gone, replaced by a rare, aching tenderness. Good, he whispered, because I am never letting you go. Behind them, Ryan looked away, giving them space, then murmured softly, I hope he deserves you. Emily turned to him and smiled sadly. Thank you for protecting me. Ryan nodded once, always. Luca extended a hand toward Ryan, a silent acknowledgement of loyalty and sacrifice. Ryan hesitated, then accepted it. The worst was over. The truth had changed everything. And as Luca pulled Emily close, guiding her out of the dim stairwell and into the new future waiting above, one thing was clear. The mafia boss who once ignored the maid would burn the world before losing her now. And Emily finally knew she no longer had to run. She had found where she belonged,